Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is great. So conventionally, we think of opportunity a lot like this. This is a prep school where I went to high school. It's called the Hotchkiss School in Lakeville, Connecticut, and it's known for its academic rigor, its structure, and its obvious opportunity. But what was really interesting about my experience at this school is that it wasn't really the thing that got my 16-year-old self out of bed every morning. It wasn't the thing that got me really excited or passionate. In fact, I really didn't relate to the opportunity offered here at all. Instead, what created a culture of achievement in me was not academics at all. It was actually figure skating. So growing up, I was a competitive figure skater. And figure skating was the thing that taught me dedication, passion, purpose, and confidence. That was the thing that got me out of bed in the morning. It had nothing to do with academics. It not only taught me what true passion felt like, but it really created a self-driven sense of motivation to achieve. And this translated not only to everything else I did in life, but also to school. So no one had to convince me that effort and really hard work was required to achieve in figure skating. I knew it intrinsically. So after that, the opportunity of school was obvious to me. So let's fast forward to 2007, a couple years later, and I found myself teaching at Locke High School in South Central Los Angeles. So I did Teach for America, and I showed up to 160 10th grade students. Most of these students actually read at a 5th grade reading level. A quarter of my students had one child, some had 2 or 3. And a lot came from single-family households. Many suffered from domestic violence, gang violence, and other forms of abuse. And in fact, my first year of teaching, a riot of 600 broke out on the campus, and the LAPD had to break it up with gas masks. So naturally, the opportunity of school was not really on my students' minds. But I really realized something far more interesting than these statistics. Despite all of this darkness and real adversity in my students' lives, there was something more interesting. They were still motivated by the same exact things that motivated me when I was their age. They wanted to feel confidence, purpose, and dedication to something like I did in skating. So despite the obvious lack of traditional resources at Locke High School, what I would argue these students were most starved for was the opportunity to pursue passion. So when I was teaching in my very first year, I assigned a research paper. It was the first paper of the year. And out of 160 students, less than 10% turned this paper in, about 15. So I took a step back and thought about the relevance of this paper. And I think it was on migrant farm workers. So I changed the topic entirely. I said, forget about migrant farm workers. The new topic is just tell me about a passion you have. The most relevant thing I could possibly think of. And then the research component was to tell me how you would pursue this passion after school or in the summer. And this particular paper, 85% of my students turned in and on time, which for Locke High School, honestly, never happened, ever. And what was really even more interesting than this is that 20 of the papers started with something like this sentence: no one has ever asked me what my passion is. So I stopped myself in my tracks and I started to read these papers, and students wanted to pursue stem cell science. They wanted to go study art. They wanted to learn film production, right? They had all of these passions that they were hoping to pursue. So wanting to capitalize on this momentum, I ran a marathon, the Los Angeles Marathon, to raise $12,000. And with that $12,000, I sent 7 students on the programs they had written about in their papers. And what was interesting about this is when those 7 came back into the school day, my next year at Locke, they were way more confident, and their attendance rates went up. They started showing up at school way more. And then their GPAs went up as a result of showing up to school more. So I thought it was a really interesting coincidence. So this became my most important time in LA, and as a result, I realized actually that running marathons is not a sustainable form of fundraising. So I scrapped that idea, and I started a proper organization called Wishbone, where we've now sent over 250 students to after-school and summer programs to pursue their passions. So Jose Luis has studied architecture. Yesenia has studied photography. Kayla has studied fashion design. And Watley has learned how to code. And we're just beginning. We're on track to be the leading provider of out-of-school access to the nation's poor. And like many of our, thank you. And like so many of those first students from Locke, those first 7, we're seeing all of our students graduate high school. They're attending college, and they're all coming back and saying that the experience made them realize what could be possible for their lives. So while this impact seems so small or so large, it started so small, right? It started with just recognizing what passion feels like myself, first of all. Then it continued by putting passion at the forefront of the school day for my students. And then it continued also by understanding that when students are curious, they will learn, and when they learn, they will succeed. Thank you.